addict, and but I've said it before. I would be addicted to anything that would make my mind feel differently because I didn't like the way I felt about myself. Has anybody here heard me speak before? Is there anybody in this room who's heard me before? No? She has. She's tired of it. She don't want to hear. I'm gonna tell a different story for her today. All right. Before we get started, let's open up with a word of prayer, okay? Dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you so much for this opportunity to come in here and speak with these women. Father, I just ask right now that you would bless them, each and every one of them, the families that they represent, the children, the mothers, the fathers, the boyfriends, the husbands, the extended family. I just ask that you, most importantly, would open up their ears, their minds, but most importantly, their hearts so they can receive your word here today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. Well, I'm glad y'all hadn't heard me before, so that's good. So now I can tell the whole story again. You know what I mean? I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. I was born and raised, and I was born in 1972. I'm 52 years old, and I was born to a mother who was a single mother. She had me at 16 years old, and my dad I never met. I never met my father. From what my mother said, he had the same disease that I got and that I'm assuming you probably have if you've ended up here. And so she said, hey, if you just leave us alone, I'll never come after you for any money. I'll never bother you. And so he never came around, and she never went after him. And so I never met the man. So I grew up to a single mom, and we grew up in Charleston, and we moved around a lot. I don't know if any of you guys have ever been in that scenario, but we moved around quite a bit as a kid. We'd be one place, then you get up, you go to another school, then you go to another place. And I talked about it before, but I mean, we were poor. I mean, we didn't have much at all. We lived in a house where I lived in a house that was probably as big as this room right here. And my bedroom door was just a sheet, you know what I mean? There was no door there, and big old furnace in the middle of the house that all the heat came from, and so we bounced around from places like that. We moved in apartment complexes where, to call them apartment complexes would be a nice term for what they really were. I mean, I've said it before, but if you got roaches and you turn on the lights and they run, you ain't really got roaches. When you cut on the light, if they like, what's up? Now you know you got some roaches, right? Okay, and that's how it was for us. And so, pretty still normal childhood I felt like though, but I can tell you, even looking back today, as I look back to when I was a child, I was always kind of on the outside looking in. I don't know how to explain it until you get on the other side of it really. That's when you really know the difference. But I know that even at a very young age, I felt like there was something different about me. And so we bounced all around, and every time I'd make friends, it was time for us to move around again until my mom married my stepdad when I was about 9 years old. And then we moved from the low class to the middle class, okay? My stepdad had a good job, and we moved into a house, and I went to the same school. And but my stepdad, he suffered from a malady too. Now, he is not one of us. I thought he was an alcoholic, but given sufficient reason, ill health, he stopped drinking. Now, that is different than me, because given sufficient reason, prison time, loss of kids, loss of family, loss of self-respect, I could not stop. But he did stop. But he drank a lot when I was a kid. And he was a mean guy when he drank. I don't know if you've ever been around a mean drunk, but my stepdad was a mean drunk, okay? And when he did, you just run for the hills because you never know what he's going to do, And so I would see them drink a lot, and that's what my parents did back in those days is they would all take us to other people's houses, and we'd play with their kids, and they'd drink all night long. That's what they did. And so I just thought that was the most natural thing in the world. And as I got older, when I had an opportunity to take a drink, I was all in. I never thought twice about it. I was probably 11 years old, my first one, and I remember just chugging as hard as I could, and that warm feeling I got, and I was like, boom, I'm all in on this. And every time I got to drink or drug from that period forward, I took the opportunity. I never turned away, okay? And so my first drink was around 11. As I got a little bit older, to 12, 13, we used to spend a night in each other's backyards, me and my friends, and we'd go steal Mad Dog from the Magic Market. We go in there, and Mad Dog is a flat bottle, and you could put one here, and you could put one here, and you could walk out the door. So we'd all go in there and steal Mad Dog and walk right out the door, and we'd go drink. Now, the kicker was I always was coming to. Like literally, everybody's been up all night, but for whatever reason, I'm coming to. I don't even remember going to sleep. Now I realize I wasn't going to sleep. I was passing out. And then I'd be coming to, and everybody else, none of them had done that. They all were up still, you know what I mean? And so I'm already at that early age drinking way more than what everybody else is, you know? And as I got into high school, you know, you start going to those parties, and I'm drinking, and when I drank, it made me feel like I fit in. You know, as I was drinking, I start feeling like, hey man, I feel a part of. I don't feel different than them. I can talk to people. Everything's great. And we used to go around, me and some friends of mine. Hey, how y'all doing? All right. We used to go around, and I had a friend of mine who would come to my house when I was about 14, 15 years old, and they would park across the street, and they would flash their lights. And I lived in a 2-story house, and my room was on the 2nd floor, and I had a rope tied around my bedpost that I had underneath the bed, and I'd pull that rope out, crack open that window, throw that rope out, and I would scale down the house. I'd jump in the car, and we'd go steal car stereos. So we'd go steal, we would, as much as you could possibly imagine, we'd fill carloads up with car stereo stuff, and we'd sell it. Well, one day he comes and he flashes those lights, and he's like, I get in the car, he's like, you know what, look, I got money already. Let's go get some cocaine. Now, I tell you, I had smoked weed already, I had drank, but my mother specifically had told me that she had a friend that did cocaine and that it messed her up big time. Don't ever do that. And so there was a little something in me that was like, but I was like, let's do it. And so we went out there, and the first sack I tried to get, we handed the guy $100. He took the $100 and boom, he ran off. You know what I mean? You know? Now, I'm gonna tell you, there's people in this program who say, when they come in, they say, I don't know if I could get faith. I don't know if I could get faith. You know, and it seems like a tough thing to do, right? But even though we got our money snatched the first time we came out there and gave that $100, you know what we did? The next time, we gave somebody else the $100, and you know what we did? We was hoping like hell that they was coming back. We had faith that son of a bitch was going to come back to the house. You know what I'm saying? And so I did have faith. I put my faith in a lot of people. You know what I mean? And the book talks about trusting and relying on God. I can trust somebody, but not rely on them. And then I can rely on somebody and not trust them. Have you ever relied on somebody you didn't trust? You ever had somebody out there that you relied on that you did not trust, but you relied on them? And on the other end, have you ever had somebody like your family who loves you, or whoever, somebody who really loves you, and you trust them, but you won't rely on them? You ever had that happen? I ask my sponsees all the time, I said, you know what, if I said, do you trust me? After I've been working with them for a little while, okay? You know, after we've been together for a little while, I say, do you trust me? And they're like, yeah, I trust you. I said, well, let me ask you this. If you won $1 billion, would you put it in my bank account and let me dole it back out to you? And they're like, no. Okay, so you trust me, but you don't rely on me. That's two different things. I got to trust and rely. And so we found that cocaine that next time I went to get it. And I tell you what, when I hit that, I was like, bam, that's woo, this is me right here, man. And I'm gonna tell you what, as much as I could possibly get that and do that, I did that. You understand? And it didn't take long for me to bounce out of high school, have a daughter on the way. My daughter was born at 16 years of, I was 16 at the time, just like my mom had done. I did the exact same thing, had a daughter right at that age. And so like any good young man, I said, well, I'm gonna quit school and I'm gonna go to work. Now, of course, at 16 years old, thinking that I'm gonna go get a job and pay for my family, it was ridiculous, right? And so I went out there and I worked, but every dollar I made, I always had this problem. Ever since I was young, every dollar I made, it's like I had a magnet turn the opposite direction. When that money would fill into that pocket, as soon as I cashed that check and it turned into cash money, as soon as I put it in my pocket, it would fly out. Anybody ever had that problem right there? I mean, as soon as I put it in there, and it's because I had a really bad drug problem even back then. And I look back, and I didn't go to rehab for the first time till I was probably 32 years old. But I tell you what, I needed rehab at 16, 17, 18, 19. I needed rehab very early in life because I was already off the chain. And what I did was I tried to get myself up the chain as far as I could, and good, no problem at all. No problem. We're gonna put you in the corner though for 10 seconds, and no, I'm just kidding. But so what I did was I found a guy who sold coke, and I always like to say that I was I sold coke. And did I ever sell a little bit? Yeah, I did, but I never made a fucking dollar off of it. Any dollar I made was so that I could use more. I never was a drug dealer. Now, I'm a salesman by trade. I sell for a living. I sell anything on earth but drugs and alcohol. I cannot sell that, because when I get my hands on it, I don't want to let go of it. You know what I mean? And so I got a hold of this guy, and we started, I started helping him sell cocaine, was what I was really doing. And, now I'm doing it more and more and more and more and more. And things got pretty crazy. And one night I went to this bar in North Charleston, and I went in, and I was supposed to be joining the National Guard. I was going, because I couldn't get a good job. So I said, I'm going to join the National Guard, go get me a job. And so I go in there and in this bar, and I literally passed out in there. Now, this place was a place that was known for beating the hell out of people. And they saw me pass out, and they grabbed me up and threw me out. Now, the girl I was with was still in there. So I tried to get back in to tell her to come on, and about 6 of them come at me. And I had about a little pocket knife in my pants, and I took that pocket knife out, boom, hit the first one that came, ran across the road, threw the knife in a graveyard, and the cops was on me. And now I'm 17 years old, and I'm going to jail for assault with intent to kill. Now, this is crazy here, man. You know what I mean? I wake up the next morning, and then people are getting bonds for $5,000. You got to pay, $500 or whatever the amount is. You got to pay for that stuff. And I go before my bond hearing, and it's boom, $100,000. Now you talking 1990s? You know what I'm saying? I mean, that, whoa, 100,000, and my family ain't home. They're out of town. They ain't even there. And so I got to sit in that jail cell for an awful long time, waiting for my parents to get back in town, waiting for them to get a lawyer, waiting for me to go for bond hearing and to finally get out. And you know what? What ended up happening is because I was underage in that bar, they ended up settling on that. My parents were able to pay the guy I stabbed some money, and they ended up settling that out because they didn't want to blow it up because I was underage in there, and I got off scot-free. Now, most people would have said, hey, this is time to wake up. You need to stop and you need to leave this alone. But you know what I thought? I'm all good now. I'm good. I'm straight. So I started going back to work, and I ended up going into the restaurant business. Anybody here ever worked a restaurant job? You want to find some people who do drugs and alcohol, go work in a restaurant. I tell you that right now, because it was the perfect job. I didn't have to be to work till like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I got off at like 11, 12 o'clock at night. I made cash money every day. It was beautiful, man. And I was working at this restaurant where I'd figured out a way to scam them out of money. So I'm taking money from them. But as much money as I'm making, I'm taking on a nightly basis. And I remember I'm leaving this place one night. I got this hostess with me. I got about a quarter ounce of cocaine with me. I got weed with me. I got money, a pocket full of money. And I'm thinking, boy, life don't get no better than this. This is, how does it get any better than this? But what I wasn't thinking about was that little girl that was born when I was 16. See, I'm living at my grandparents' house. I've been kicked out of my house. And so I'm living with my grandparents. And that little girl is at that house. And I'm leaving to go party, and I ain't never even going to go see her. Never even see her over the weekend. She's there all weekend long, and I'm gone all weekend long. Never took the time to go see my daughter. You know what I mean? And I remember my grandparents used to tell them how messed up I was, and it used to burn me. I couldn't believe they did. I knew other people who tried to cover for their kids and would tell them good stuff. And how could they do this to me? How could they tell them all kind of bad stuff about me? And I got sober, and I realized, thank God they told that little girl that. So she knew that ain't how a daddy's supposed to treat their daughter. You know what I'm saying? And today I'm grateful that they did that, because I wasn't being the father that I needed to be. And it wasn't because I didn't want to. It wasn't because I didn't love my daughter. I do love my daughter. I did love my daughter. It's because I didn't have the power in me to do the right thing and to be the dad that I needed to be. Period. It wasn't that I was a bad guy. It was I didn't have the power to do the right things. Drugs and alcohol had their hooks in me, and I was headed down this way unless something changed big time. And so I work in this restaurant. Eventually, I worked long enough to where they realize, when Frank works, money's missing. So they're like, hey, we got to cut this guy loose. And so I'm like 24 years old, and I'm like, well, I'm expensive. I mean, me is expensive. I'm not even talking about bills. I'm talking about me. I'm expensive. So I got to find a job where I can make money for me and then pay bills too. Where in the heck am I going to do that? Well, I had some friends in the car business, and I was like, well, I'll go start selling cars. And so I got in the car business. Now, if you think that anybody here work at a car lot, if you haven't, let me tell you, if you think there's drug and alcohol in restaurants, go to car lots with car salesmen. I'm going to tell you this. It was unbelievable, man. I mean, like I said, the first dealership I worked at, you could drink or drug in the parts department bathroom. They just wanted to make sure you didn't do it in the showroom floor bathroom. But you people on Friday, we get paid, and there'd be a line outside the parts department bathroom with people waiting to get in to do their drugs. It's 10 deep waiting to get in that door so that everybody could do their own drugs. You know what I'm saying? And the problem is, for me, when I did drugs and alcohol, I didn't want to work. I don't know about y'all, but like when I'm cocaine, the last thing I feel like doing is talking to somebody about buying a car, And so what I would do is I would leave. I would leave the lot. And now when you work at a place and like at noon, you just leave and you're supposed to be there till 6. They don't take too kindly to that after a while. They're like, what the hell are you doing? And so I ended up bouncing from car lot to car lot to car lot to car lot. And eventually it got so bad to where I couldn't work in the car business in Charleston. My reputation was so bad. And I was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so my stepbrother owned a business, and he knew of a guy in Columbia who owned a similar business. And he somehow talked this guy into believing, hey, Frank can be your sales manager. Now, here I am, dead broke, living at my grandmother's died. My grandfather has moved out of the house and is living with his new wife. I'm in this house. All I got to do is pay the light bill, phone bill, water, but what am I doing? I'm not paying any of that. And not only am I not doing that, every time my grandfather comes home to check on the house, something's missing out of the house. You know what I'm saying? And there was something on the wall that's gone now. You know what I'm saying? And so he's like, man, we got to get you out of here. And so I end up moving from Charleston to Columbia because Charleston is messed up. I don't know if y'all know this, but Charleston's messed up. So I'm going to move to Columbia. Anybody here ever done that? Who here is not from Florence, South Carolina? So you have made a geographical change. Everybody in this room has made a change saying, I need to get the hell out of where I'm at and I need to go somewhere else, right? You know what the problem was when I got to Columbia? I brought me. I was there. And so the goose hung high, just like what the big book talks about, the goose hung high for a while, but pretty soon the old Frank starts coming back. And I did well. I got in there and I started doing real good for the first couple months. And I'd only party a little bit because I'd really not found my groove in Columbia. But let me tell you, it didn't take long for me to find that groove. And when I did, you know what was happening? I wasn't showing up to work. I'd come into work with the wrong color clothes on. I got a brown top and blue pants. I mean, it's like I'm wearing suits, but they don't match. You know what I'm saying? Plaid, and then I'm so blind, put my clothes on. I'm so messed up. I don't even know what I'm putting on. And I'm showing up to work. And after a while, it got so bad that the guy's like, Frank, I got to let you go. And I'm like, man, what am I going to do? I mean, my family was so happy. This ain't been but 6 months. My family was so happy to drive me to Columbia and drop me off. There ain't no calling them up saying I'm coming back. What am I going to do? And for the first time in my life, I reached out for help. And so I picked up the phone and I called a number for NA. Anybody here know NA? I called a number and I got a hold of a guy. And this guy said, hey, I'm going to a meeting tonight. Why don't you meet me there? And I was like, okay. So I hadn't said anything, but I had actually been to meetings prior to this because I had girlfriends that said, Frank, you got a big time drug problem. Now, I personally did not believe I had a problem, okay? But just to appease them, to get them off my back, because I didn't want to break up with them, I decided I went to a couple meetings, okay? But this time when I went, I decided, you know what, I'm going to go all in on this thing. So I got in and I got a sponsor for the first time. First time ever, I got me a sponsor. I got a phone list. Anybody here get the phone list? You go to the meetings and you tell them you're brand new, what do they give you? Phone list with everybody's know. Who here is not called numbers when who's thrown those away? I've thrown those away a million times. Matter of fact, the first meeting I went to, an AA meeting, they bought me a big book. You know what I did with that big book? tossed it in the back of my car. I don't know what happened to it. First meeting ever. I thought it was the coolest thing. And so I go to this meeting this time though, and they give me that phone list, and you know what I did? I actually started calling people. Started making phone calls to people. And then, you know, my sponsor was involved in H&I, hospitals and institutions. And so we went to some of the hospitals around there and we would talk to people. And he was a part of the area. And so they were having like some conference in Columbia at this time. And he was on the committee and I became a committee member on that. And then he said, Frank, I want you to start working these steps. And he gave me this workbook. Anybody here ever seen that workbook of NA? No? Well, don't. If you think AA is hard, look at that damn workbook of NA. I promise you that. But he handed me a workbook about this stick. He said, okay, I want you to start on step 1. And so, dude, I mean, him whipping me and every single day asking me about it. And me, finally, I got step 1 done. And so he says, I want you to come over and we want to talk about it. So I got over there. We talked about it. He says, okay, now we're going to move to step 2. I was like, step fucking 2? I ain't doing no more. I'm not writing no more of this shit right here. They asked me the same questions 20 different times, 20 different ways. I'm not doing that. You're crazy. And so I started not doing any work in the program. Has anybody here ever done that? Tried to get sober before and not done any work in the program? You know what happens over the course of time when you don't do work in the program? Nothing happens. Nothing changes. See, there's something inside me that needs to change. And if it don't change, the old me's coming out. I can be good for so long. I can not do drugs for a little bit of time. I can do the right thing, get a job for a little bit of time. I can be the good boyfriend for a little bit of time. But you give me long enough and the real me is going to come out at some point. Because all I'm doing is trying to just say no. And I can't just say no. And so eventually, after about 110 days, and I say that because that's the longest I ever had sober, outside of right now, the 17 years I got today, okay, was that. The 110 days. I made it 110 days, and I had this friend come by, and he's like, hey, let's go to this bar, man. And I was like, okay, let's go. And I go there, and he's like, hey, we can get some cocaine. And I was like, okay. And so we're standing there, and he's like, you want a beer? And I was like, no, because I'm not going to relapse on a beer, okay? Until the cocaine gets here, then I'm not going to relapse for a beer. But guess what? The cocaine got there. The beer got there. And that set me off on a run. That was a hell of a run. And I tell you what, I really, really got beat down. I mean, I was in there. I could hardly work. I'm in Columbia. I ain't got family there. So instead of being in Charleston where I got family and I'm doing family interactions, now I got nobody. And so I'm just out there wilding out. And things are getting real bad. And I would go to meetings here and there. And I'd go out and I'd go to a meeting and I'd go get fucked up leaving the meeting. Anybody here ever done that? Go to a meeting, get fucked up after you left the meeting within an hour or two? I did it again and again and again. And finally I went in a meeting one time and I sat down in there and I said, hey, I got honest. It was a newcomer meeting. They split up the meeting between a regular meeting and a newcomer meeting. And I'm in this newcomer meeting, an AA meeting. And I was like, you know what? I don't know what the fuck's wrong with me. I said, I can't fucking stop. I said, when I leave here tonight, I'm probably going to get fucked up tonight. And the guy who was chairing the meeting said, Frank, come speak to me after the meeting. And so I came up to him, and his name was Lane. And Lane said, Frank, he said, you know that reading at the beginning of the meeting, how it works? You know, when everybody gets up and gets coffee and they're walking around, how it works? I said, yeah. He said, that's the program. He said, these meetings are the fellowship, and the fellowship is good, but that's not the program. The program is those 12 steps. And I know a place you can go to. They will teach you those 12 steps and you can get free from the bonds of addiction and alcoholism. He said, I want you to call me tomorrow. And I'm like, I will call you tomorrow. Yes, I'll definitely call you. 2 weeks later, I pick up the phone. I was like, hey, is that offer still good? He's like, yeah, man. And so I went from there to a place in Sumter, South Carolina, okay? And that place is called AnyLink. Anybody here ever heard of AnyLink? And AnyLink is a place where if you ain't looking to get sober, AnyLink is the worst place on the fucking place on the planet. First of all, it's in Sumter, South Carolina, which there ain't shit but damn heat and clay in Sumter, South Carolina. That's all that's there. And then when you get there, anything you don't want to do, they tell you, go to AnyLink. Boy, you want to talk about getting irritated? You want to do something? You know, can I go to the store? Nope, you can't go. Why not? You said you go to AnyLink. What, man? Fuck this AnyLink. And so, but I get in there, I actually came in there and really tried to give it everything I got. They had meetings multiple times a day, probably like you have in here. They take you out to get a job where you work, just like here. And then they had a late night meeting at 9:30 where they did a big book study, okay? And this guy named Bill Ellis, God rest his soul, used to do this big book study, man, and we used to read that. But then he got to this chapter in the big book called We Agnostics. Anybody ever heard of that? Chapter 4, We Agnostics. And I thought, that ain't me. I went to church as a little boy. I grew up going to church, man. I'm a good Christian, man. I go 3 times a year. What you talking about? You know what I mean? I got that God thing locked. I don't really need to worry about that chapter 4. The God thing I got down. And so we read through all of that, and they tell you get a sponsor, and I got a sponsor. And so I start working these steps, and this guy's in there, and I got a daughter that I got to pay child support for. I still got an apartment that I left. I got a guy that I'm working with, right? That I was in business with, that I'm working for. And so I get convinced that dude, I cannot be working some $5 an hour job, you know? And so I go call my guy who I'm in the window business with, and he comes to Sumter, and we start selling windows in Sumter, and now I'm big balling in rehab. Like, I got thousands of dollars I'm walking around rehab with. Now I done went to Sumter Mall, bought up all the shit they got in Sumter Mall. I'm walking around, I got a pocket full of money, my rent's paid, I'm washing my car. Every week I'm washing that car. You can't drive, you ain't got your key, but I'm gonna wash it every week, get the dust off of it, you know what I'm saying? And I done bought me a TV. Somebody had cable in this place, and I done went and got a splitter and run off. And the guy didn't even know it. I got a splitter to unhook this cable, took that splitter pole and ran it into the place I'm staying. So I got cable TV coming into my room. I mean, I'm living large. I'm trying to talk to every girl that's in there. And this guy named Dennis kept saying, Frank, you need to get a $5 an hour job. You need to get a $5 an hour job. He kept on and on and on and on and on. And so one day I was so pissed off at hearing this. I said, let me ask you this, Dennis, how do people in Hollywood get sober? They ain't dead broke. And he said, you ain't in Hollywood, and you'll never get sober till you're dead broke. And I said, man, fuck you, dude. Something deep down inside me, though, knew he was right. And see, this time around, they told me to get on the steps, this through Alcoholics Anonymous. And they told me to write out my resentments. And I was like, no problem. Then they said, I want you to write why you're resentful. And I'm like, no problem. Then they said, I want you to look at where you've been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, frightened, and where you're to blame. And I was like, I ain't doing that shit. What are you talking? I don't think I really resent all these people. I misunderstood you here, man. I don't have that. And I stopped doing the work. Number one, I wasn't listening to what they told me to do. I did everything they told me not to do. I got a cell phone. I got a job making a bunch of money. I'm not working my step work anymore. And I got spiritually sick as shit. And one day I kicked the door in while Dennis was in there, said, give me my fucking keys. They grabbed me my keys. And when I went to walk out, they used to have this thing where somebody tried to leave. They would like try to flatten your tires. They would like all surround your car. I was with a posse of guys who got in the car to follow somebody to Rondo, South Carolina, to try to get him and drag him back, okay? But you know what happened when I went to leave? Nothing. Nobody said a word. You know why? Because I was self-will run riot up in this place. I wanted my way. I wanted it how I wanted. They didn't know what the fuck they was doing. It was all my way. And when I went to leave, they was like, let that motherfucker go. Not just the staff, but the other people in there. And nobody said a word. And I went and bought a 12-pack at the gas station down the road. Went to Charleston, bought some cocaine, got a hotel room, and boom, it was on. I did that, went back to Columbia where I'd been staying before, except the apartment was gone now. So now I move into this Indian hotel. And let me tell you this, there's one thing I want to tell you about an Indian hotel. When you're staying in there, if they got a mattress cover, don't never lift that mattress cover up and look up underneath there to see what's underneath there. I'm sleeping on the edge of this mattress now because I'm like, I can't even put my weight on the inside of this thing. And I'm living like that for the next couple years. And it was bad, man. I mean, it never got better. That's as good as what it got. And I lived to use, and I'm in Columbia. I'm living off Bush River Road in the Knights Inn. I moved from that one to the Knights Inn, and I'm living there. Yeah, I'm living in Knights Inn. And I'm the most fucked up motherfucker in that place, which is saying something. I mean, that's really a statement to say I was the most fucked up dude in there. But I was, because there's a lot of fucked up people in that place, and I was the most fucked up. And things were just bad. And so eventually it gets so bad, you know what I said? Man, Columbia is bad. I got to move back to Charleston, okay? I got to get away from this Columbia. I need to move back to Charleston. And so I packed up my shit and I moved back to Charleston and moved right into the In-Town Suites. Now, you know what's funny is 10 years prior, I had worked at a car lot, Gene Reed Chevrolet, right across the street. And there was a salesman there who lived there. And I'm thinking, who the fuck lives in a fucking In-Town Suites? 10 years later, my ass is living in the In-Town Suites. And I like to tell people, you know, I live today, I got a house. And it's on the water, and I got a dock that goes out there, and it goes into water that goes into the ocean, and there's crabs underneath there. And you can take chicken, you can take Church's chicken and put some hot sauce on it, tie a string to the bone, and put it down in the water. And them crabs will come up there and eat it. And when you go to pull it out, if you go nice and easy, you can literally pull that crab right out of the water and put it right into the bucket to eat it. He never even realizes you're pulling him out of the water. See, drugs and alcohol didn't just take me down like that. It grabbed me and pulled me down so slowly that I could not differentiate the true from the false. To me, this was the normal life right here. I couldn't see it. And so I'm living in In-Town Suites, and that's when it's good. When it's bad, because if you don't pay if you ain't got the money for a week, you got to go move in somewhere else for the short term. So I lived at some other dive hotels in there that was even worse than In-Town Suites, and I'm living there. And you know, things are getting bad. And one day in July 4th of 2007, I had money in my pocket. I just got paid, and I was saying, you know what, I'm gonna go get me some shit. And so I called the dude, and he's like, hey man, I'm here and I'm leaving in 10 minutes. And I told him I'll be there in 5. Now he's 30 minutes away, but I'm gonna be there in 5 minutes. And if I gotta drive through gas station parking lots to get around lights to get there in 5 minutes, I'm gonna be there in 5 minutes. So I roll through this stop sign, leaving right out the place, and the cops stopped me. And I'm thinking, damn, I'm gonna get a ticket. Well, unbeknownst to me, I got a warrant for somebody put a what do you call it when you the order something where you can't see the person? What do you call it? The Restraining order. Yeah, it was my stepbrother. I had the one who got me the job in Columbia. I had threatened to kill him, and he believed me. And but I always say I didn't really want to kill him. I just wanted to beat his ass so bad to where he limped there for the rest of his life. He said, "Don't fuck with Frank. Don't fuck with Frank. Don't fuck." And so he believed that. And so he had put a restraining order, and there was a $50 court cost that I missed because I didn't go to court because I was like, screw it, let him get his restraining order. And so they cart me off to jail. Well, as I'm about to go leave to get in the car, there's this girl who happens to be right outside of there, and she says, Frank. And I'm like, what? I recognize this girl. I ain't seen this girl in 10 years. She's like, what you doing? I was like, well, I'm about to get locked up. She says, well, what are you doing when you get out? I said, I don't know. She says, well, let's get together. I was like, okay, well, I ain't got her number. You know, I'm like, okay. You know, I get in the car. So I go to the jail, and as soon as I walk in, they're like, are you Frank Crump? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you got a phone call. So I'm like, phone call? So I pick up the phone. I'm like, and it's this chick. How did she call the jail? Well, we some resourceful people here, man. I'm thinking, how in the world? I never walked into jail and somebody's got the phone for me. But she's on it. She's like, when you get out, here's my number. Call me. And I'm like, well, I'll get out because I got money in my pocket still. I said, I'll get my mama to get me out. And so my mom came and got me out. And I said, you know, it's July 5th. So I said, I'm going to party like it's July 4th. And so I went and picked her up, went and got some cocaine, and we went back to In-Town Suites. And I'm going to party. And the problem with us was you know, by this time, I've got this paranoia. Anybody here ever get paranoid doing cocaine? You know, and she's got her own tick, which is when I do cocaine, I like the blinds drawn. I like them down. I like the noise down. I like the TV just right. I like the lights down. I like things nice and quiet. And all. Well, she's the opposite. She likes the damn door open. I mean, it was just so all night long we going back and forth on this where I'm trying to go behind her and shut down. I'm like, get in here. You know what I mean? I mean, this ain't even no fun. You know what I'm saying? It's like, hey, get the fuck in here. And so So all night long we're going through this, and one time at about 2 o'clock in the morning on July 6th, she comes back in, she says, the police are coming, and comes back in the room, and I got about a half ball of some raw dog, and I went. Now, this is not my first time swallowing a bunch of cocaine, and I can tell you that I knew that there was going to be some severe paranoia coming my way, and I'm like, I got to have a drink. And so I left her in the room, went to the car, drove across the street to this bar, and right as I was coming to the bar, they're locking the door. And this paranoia hit me like I ain't never had before. And in my mind, somebody's after me. And I ran my ass across, you know what 52 is? You know what Irby Street is? In Charleston, that's called Rivers Avenue. You take Irby all the way out, 52, all the way down, you'll hit a road called Rivers Avenue in Charleston, South Carolina. That's 52, and it's 4 lanes of traffic with a little bit more traffic than that's here in Florence. And I ran my ass across those 4 lanes of traffic, ran into this neighborhood, and started beating on this door. Somebody's after me, somebody's after me. And the people opened the door, they saw me, and they was like, boop, they locked it. And I started beating on the window, boom, 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 bust the window out. Cut my wrist. I'm standing on their porch, bleeding all over the place. So much so that I ended up having to buy these people a brand new porch as part of my payback, to whatever you call it, when you restitution, right? I had to buy them a brand new porch, $10,000 for a brand new porch. And so I'm like, what am I going to do? So I run to the house next door. I see a privacy fence. I hit this privacy fence door so hard that the door went like that. And I jumped up over the damn thing, ran to the back, and I hit the door. And it was unlocked. And I went inside and I said, if anybody's here, please don't shoot me. And the next thing you know what I'm hearing? Woo, 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 woo. But it takes them some time to figure out that I'm in the house next door. They think I done run off. You know what I'm saying? They don't think I'm going to be in the house right next door sitting in the house. So it takes a little while, but they finally come in there, drag me out, put me in an ambulance, take me to the hospital because I'm bleeding all over the place. I'm cuffed to the bed, and they get me in there, and they're like, have you been drinking? I was like, no. And they take my blood, and they come back. They say, no, you haven't been drinking, but you got a copious amount of cocaine in your system. And so they shot me up with this thing to try to calm me down, and they could see it wasn't calming me down, so they come and shot me up with another one, and finally, I'm starting to come down a little bit, right? And as I'm sitting there, it's morning is coming up on January or July 6th. Morning's coming up. And I hear this nurse walk by the door. She says, I don't even see her. She just talks to the cop up front. She says, what's that guy in here for? And I don't even see her, but I hear her asking the cop that, and the cop's like, somebody was chasing him or something, because I had him convinced somebody was after me. Somebody was chasing me. And he said, that guy right there? And the cop says, yeah. And she says, he was in here a month ago. He thought somebody was in his car. See, a month ago, prior to that, I was so out of my fucking mind on cocaine. I had rolled up in my parents' house, went in their backyard, and was opening up my doors, and my trunk convinced somebody was in my damn car, and told my parents to call the cops. But they didn't call the cops. They called an ambulance. They took my ass to that same hospital, and that same woman had seen me. But you know what I did when I walked out the hospital that day? As soon as I walked out the next day, I called my dealer, and I was like, hey, I need some shit. I had a fucked up night. Right back at it. This time around, though, there ain't no calling, because I'm handcuffed to the bed, and now I'm looking at 15 years to life. And I remember going into this cell, this one-man cell, because I'm bandaged up. You ever see somebody come into hospital clothes to jail? You ever been in jail and see somebody with hospital clothes and wonder what happened to that asshole, how they end up like that? I was that asshole this time. And I come up in there, and I go in this cell, and I'm like, man, how did my life get to this? I love my family. I could work and make a few dollars. What's wrong with me? I'm going to be 60 years old when 50, 60 years old when I get out. Because I'm in the house. I was like, if I could kill myself, I'd do it. But the tower they give you ain't but about that long in there. And I'm like, so finally I'm like, can I get a Bible? And so they bring me a Bible, and not because I even wanted to read the Bible. I didn't even believe there was a God anymore. I thought, what God would have me out here on the side of this road doing the things I'm doing? What God would have me in the place that I'm at? I just wanted a Bible because I knew it was a book that they had to give me if I asked. So I didn't try to think about killing myself the whole time I'm in there. Let me just at least read something. And so for the first time in my life, I opened up that Bible and I started reading. The first thing I read was Proverbs. And I don't know if you know it, but the Proverbs actually has Proverbs in there. I don't know if you know that. I didn't know. I went to church my whole life. I never knew that the chapter of Proverbs has Proverbs in it. And what it tells you is things to do and things not to do. And everything it said don't do, I was doing. And everything it said not to do, I was doing the opposite. And so then I get into this chapter called Ecclesiastes, where it talks about this guy named King Solomon, who was the big baller of his day. Okay, he was like the Jeff Bezos, the Elon Musk of his day. He had everything he wanted. Really, he was like Trump. Really, he ran all of Israel. He had herds, and he had houses, and he had groves of flowering plants, and people would come all over to give him gold and treasure. He says, and he even said something that really made me think twice. He said, I had a harem. And the delight of the heart of man. I'm thinking, harem? That sounds pretty good. So I'm like, man. And then I read a little further, and it says, when he looked at everything he had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. And I always thought money would fix my problem. If I just had enough money, that's what would fix my problem. And then I kept on reading. And one night I got to this chapter called Romans chapter 7. And that chapter changed my life because it says, for the good I want to do, I do not do. No, the evil that I don't want to do, this I keep on doing. And I was like, that's me. See, I didn't want to do, I got to the point where I didn't want to be fucked up no more. I wanted to do the right thing. But there's something in me that would not allow me to do that. And it says, who will rescue me from this body of death? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. And I was like, that's the power. And a month later, I got on my knees and prayed and asked Christ to come into my heart. And I can tell you, for me, things changed right there. But let me just tell you this. Getting a connection with God was not enough. You know why? Because there were some guys in there that had saved lettuce. We're in jail. You ever heard of saving, you know what, cabbage? You know what you do with cabbage? They saved the cabbage, dried it out, and they was going to smoke it. Now, I don't even smoke cigarettes, right? But I wanted to smoke that damn cabbage. You know why? For the effect. Now, here it is. I done prayed and asked God. See, having a conception of God and asking God to help me was good. But I needed more than that. I needed to do some work inside of me for that to change. It was not going to be just praying to God and it be done. And so when I got out, I ended up bonding out and going to a place in Florence here, same place that Donovan went to. And when I got there, the first thing they did was they opened up that big book to the first edition, and it said to show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. And I remember thinking, damn, nobody's ever told me precisely how to recover. I've been to a bunch of meetings. I talked to a lot of people. Nobody's ever told me how to do it. He said, we're going to show you precisely how to recover. And I thought, you know what? I might have a chance with precisely. You show me something precisely, I might have a chance. And then they told me to read the book. And they said, I said, what you want me to read? I mean, what pages? He says, everything in black. Did they tell you that here? You get everything in black? Everything in black? Yeah. And I was like, damn, that's a lot of reading. They said, well, how bad was your drug and alcohol use? I said, pretty bad. He said, well, you might want to read everything in black. And so in 2 weeks' time, I read everything in black for the first time. Then they said, you need to get a sponsor. And there was a guy in there who was 10 years younger than me, but he was the first guy I ever talked to that ever admitting to being as fucked up on cocaine as I was. He talked about the paranoia. See, people don't like to talk, the stuff I talked about earlier, nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about how fucked up it was like that because it makes me look fucked up. So I wouldn't want to express that in a meeting. I wouldn't want to tell nobody about that. They talk about us leading a double life. I got this life I want you to present to you, but I got this other life going on when I'm getting high and drunk. But this guy was the first guy who had recovered. He had worked these 12 steps, and he was willing to admit that to me. And even though he was 10 years younger than me, I asked him to sponsor me. And so we started going through the work of this program, and we started reading the big book, and when there was a step, we took it. And we got on that 4th step, and this time around, I was willing to right the resentments. I was willing to look at where I was selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, frightened, where I was to blame. I looked at the fears, and I never thought I had any fears. Honestly, I thought I never had any fears because I suppressed it because, let me tell you this, where I grew up, you don't have no you don't show nobody you scared of nothing. You understand? I grew up in North Charleston. You don't go around telling nobody you scared of nothing. You act like you ain't scared of nothing. right? But what I found out was I was afraid of what you thought about me. So that if you guys were all talking, I'd be afraid to come up and say something to you because you might not think I'm good enough. I was afraid of financial security. You know why? Because if I didn't have money, who would like me and who would love me? I was afraid of being alone. So I would grab onto a maladjusted relationship and try to hang on to that shit forever because I was so afraid of being alone and being with myself. I couldn't stand how I felt on the inside. And I learned all of that from going through that inventory. But then it's one thing to write it because I put my deepest, darkest secrets on there. I had a man come to that meeting one night from outside like I'm doing right now. And he said, I did an inventory, but I didn't go all the way back to when I was a child. He said, this time around, I went all the way back, and he had like 8 years at that time. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to put everything down. And I did. But when it came to the fifth step, now I'm supposed to be meeting my sponsor. You know what? He's running late. Like an hour behind. And I'm thinking, how the hell can I tell this guy my deepest, darkest stuff that happened to me when I was a child when he ain't even here on time? And this guy named Nathan sees me all kind of antsy. He's like, what's wrong, Frank? I said, I'm supposed to be doing a fifth step with this guy, and he ain't even here on time, and I got my life story on here. He said, why don't you tell him how you feel? I said, okay. That guy came, and I said, man, I got stuff I swore I'd never tell another human being on this paper. He said, Frank, I swear to you, I'll never tell another living soul what you tell me. And I said it all. And I believe he never told a soul. And let me tell you this, the freedom I felt from getting it out. A burden shared is a burden lightened. And then I got to see myself for what I really was. And so 6 and 7 is all about spending that hour with God and thinking, hey, am I willing to give these things to God? And do I really believe he can take them? And let me tell you this, it's easy to say yes, but when you in that room with God and you just about to give him everything, it takes me that hour of meditating on that to really get down deep and say, yes, I do believe. I got to meditate on that because I've been doing these things since I was 5, 6 years old. You're going to tell me just by praying, he's going to take that away from me? I need to meditate on whether I really believe that he can do that. And at the end of that hour, I did believe. I wanted him to, and I was willing to believe he could. And on step 7, I prayed for him to remove him, and he did. Now, I can tell you over the years what I've learned is he'll remove them, and then I can grab some of these things right back. But he removed them. Steps 8 and 9, I got a chance to make amends. I got to go to that stepbrother that I swore I wanted to kill. I got to make amends to him, and he wasn't all warm and fuzzy. See, I had really tried to do him some harm. And he wasn't all like, oh, great, and hey, everything's great. No, he was like, I don't know, man, you know, you did some messed up stuff. It wasn't some beautiful amends, but I cleared off my side of the street. I've had a chance to make amends on financial amends. I owed $120,000 in back taxes. See, I was working jobs and claiming 9. Anybody ever done that? So you get all your money? I'm working in the car business, making great money, and I'm claiming 9. So I get every dollar I got because I got to have some money, man. You know what I'm saying? I need to buy. And so I owed I actually owed $60,000 in back taxes. After penalties and interest, $120,000. I got to, over the course of time, pay all that money back. And because I did that, it allowed me to start a business. Today, I'm retired. At 52 years old, I'm retired. I actually retired at 50. But at 52, I'm retired because I was able to start a business and work the shit out of it using the principles of this program. And it was successful. Thank God, you know what I mean? And I can tell you that, so now I go to 10, where I get a chance to look at myself on a daily basis. I get to look at where am I selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, frightened, and where I'm to blame. And for me, I was not a natural 10th stepper, meaning I didn't instantly know these things. And I had to do a lot of 4 steps. Okay, I didn't just do 1 4 step. I did a 4 step with that guy. Before I left the place I went to, I did another 4 step. I did multiple 4 steps throughout that year, and I continued to write stuff out for years. I would write it out because what I wanted to know was what was really going on with me. And so a lot of times when I get angry today, I know what the deal is. It ain't what I'm angry about. It's about I'm afraid of my financial security, or I'm afraid of what you think about me, or I'm afraid of this. That's what the real problem is. It ain't you. It's the way I'm perceiving it. You see? Then step 11, I get to pray and meditate. And we started that from the very beginning, getting on my knees and praying every morning, God, please give me the power to stay sober throughout the day. Now, there's other literature we have in there, but for me, the most important thing I can ask God in the morning is please give me the power to stay sober today, and at night on the knees saying, God, thank you for keeping me sober today. Now, I pray for a lot of other things besides that. I do meditations, but that's the two most important things I do. And as I continue to do these things, get better and better and better. And then the payoff is step 12, because I don't know about y'all, but I like to get really high. Did anybody here like to get really high, or did y'all like to get a little bit high? Like I was the type of guy with my own drugs, people would try to slow me down. You know what I mean? They'd be like, hey, you might want to slow that down. No, F that, man. I'm going up there. Woo! I wanted a bell ringer. Well, my question to you is, you stop doing drugs and alcohol, what are you going to do to replace that high in your life? What are you going to do? How are you going to get that same high in your life? You know how you do it? Helping other people. Now, if you ain't done it, that sounds like the craziest thing in the world. And you could not have told me before I came into this program that that's what it was going to be. You could not have said, Frank, helping others is going to be the greatest thing you ever do. I'd be like, you're fucking crazy. Ain't no way. Let me tell you this. The feeling I get on the inside when I help people is so good, from the top of my head down to my toes. They just curl up, and it feels great to pour into somebody. And I'm not talking about even what I'm doing right now ain't good enough. Let me tell you this. What I'm sitting here with you doing right now is good. It's good. Okay? Talking to people's good. But let me tell you, it does not replace sitting down with somebody, pulling out this book, and going through the steps with that person one by one, and seeing a miracle take place right in front of you. Seeing somebody who's beat down, just cannot stop using no matter what, and seeing them go through these steps, and ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding force of them, be cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions begin to dominate them. It is the most amazing thing you ever see in your life. It's beyond belief. I get to see miracles take place in front of me all the time. I've heard people in the program say, I've never seen a burning bush. You ever heard that in a meeting? I've heard it. I ain't never seen a burning bush. What the fuck are you talking about? What are you looking at? Open your eyes. There's miracles popping off all around. You ladies are miracles. You ain't using today. If you like me, that's a miracle, man. That's a miracle. And so I tell you, the one thing when I went to this place that I want to impart on you is I got in there, and I knew I had passed the point where there was a return on my using. I had gotten to the point where I knew in my own heart I was going to use to death or spend the rest of my life in prison. In my mind, I was going to get it wrapped up in a conspiracy, a drug conspiracy, and they was going to put my ass in jail for the rest of my life because of people I was hanging out with. It worked out a different way. But it was life in prison or die using was my two alternatives. And when I got into this rehab, after about 2 weeks of being there, it finally hit me sitting in there. The best things could ever work out for you if you don't get it is to come back again. That's the best thing. If you don't get in here and get this thing, the best thing you can hope for is to come back again. Because you're either going to die using or spend the rest of your life in prison. So at what point am I just going to go all in? What point is it that I'm just going to say, you know what? I'm drawing a line in the sand. I'm going all in. I don't know what this thing's going to bring for me. I don't know how it's going to work out. I don't know how my life's going to be. I don't know what's going to happen. All I know is I can't go back to what I was before. I got to do this thing, whatever it takes. The book calls that a desperation of a drowning man. And you ain't got to walk in here with it, but at some point, you got to get it if you want to get it. And so I tell you, the blessings of this program have brought me. My wife is here with me today. Like I said, I'm retired from my business. I own my house. I own my cars. I could tell you, I got a relationship with my son who's a different kid than me. I remember we took him to a party in the 9th grade. And it was not a party. He was in the 8th grade going into the 9th, and all the kids that were going to this school were going to get together playing basketball. And the older brother comes home later that night with some girls and beer. And so my son calls home and says, hey, I want to come home. She comes in and she says, hey, he wants us to come pick him up. I'm like, man, he's only been there a couple hours. He wants to come pick him up. Why? He says, well, the older brother's come home and he's got beer and girls. And I said, and he wants to go home. I'm thinking, if that would have been me, I'd have been like, hey, everybody stay here tonight. Can I stay too? You know, I'd like to think that's because I got a chance to be different to him, to raise him up where he didn't see drinking and drugging. He didn't see that. I can't do anything about my 2 daughters. I got 2 daughters. I can't change that. I can be the best father I can be to them now. I can be the best grandfather when they have kids. I can be the best grandfather I can be to them. And I can help other people who have kids that are young. I can help make a difference in their life so they don't treat their kids like I treated mine. I can't go back and redo the white picket fence. But I can go back and I can help other people and I can feel good inside about that. And I can know the same God that was looking out for me is looking out for them kids too. My kids, he's looking out for them, okay? And so I just want to encourage you, like I said, if you're new here or whether you've been here for a while, this is a lifetime journey we're in right here. Like a good friend of mine said, it's one day at a time for the rest of your life. That's how he put it to me. Now that sounds like a lot, but it ain't. Because if I do what I need to do today, the tomorrows will take care of themselves, okay? It's a pleasure coming in here and talking to you ladies. I appreciate y'all letting me come out here.